What's up, guys? Alright, so I know that I said that I was going to be showing you guys some of the images from my A7R II like studio wise, but I have some images from my gym session that I did yesterday morning. I did a bunch of photos and videos, which I always do for them, but these are some images from that, and we're going to learn how to edit them on a smartphone. Alright, so as I said, we're going to be learning how to edit these photos on a smartphone. We are going to be using an application called Lightroom, which is free from the App Store, so it should be pretty easy to get. So first things first, I need to learn or figure out how to get this screen onto like in this area somehow. Maybe a little bit of magic will work. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, hit! All right, well, that's better. Okay, cool. Now you guys can see what I see. Awesome. So, as I said, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into our App Store and get Lightroom. Also available on Android for those of you who like the green bubbles, whatever. So first thing, we're going to come over here. We're going to type Lightroom, and you should be able to find it just like that. So obviously I already have it downloaded, so I'm just going to go ahead and click Open, and it'll bring you to a screen just like this right here. I've already put my photos on my camera roll, so that's where I'm going to be importing the photos into Lightroom from. Let's see, into Lightroom from. So now I'm going to import from the camera roll, and today we're going to be editing from easy to medium to more difficult as far as like white balance is concerned and whatnot. Now you guys can see all of my selfies of my glasses that I'm looking to choose. Anywho, so we're going to start off with this photo right here. Right away I can see that it's a little bit washed out as far as the highlights go. Good exposure overall, not bad, right? Pretty easy to edit. So a few things that we can do to this photo just to tweak it a tiny little bit is going to go to actually light. I almost always do the exact same things to my photos unless I'm trying to go for some kind of teal and orange look, which is what I posted yesterday on the gym's Facebook or gym's Instagram rather. So I'm going to bring up that exposure just a hair, and I'm going to tone down the highlights quite a bit because they are a little bit washed out. Now you can always go back and forth from the original image that you have on here to the image that you're currently at, or the editing that you're currently at. All you have to do is put your finger down on the photo and hold it down, and it'll show you before, right? Easy. I know there are plenty of Lightroom tutorials out there for the phone, but this was actually requested by one of my friends at work. So he originally asked me, hey man, how do you edit your photos in Lightroom on your phone? And I was like, well, if I tell you, then you're gonna tell everybody else, and then I'm just gonna make a video about it. Why not? So that's how you look at your image before and after. Now, I always like to slide that contrast slider to the right quite a bit because I love contrast. Who doesn't? And I'm going to bring up the shadows because I always bring up shadows in my photos. I just like to get that shadow detail in the image because it looks a lot better. It gives it more dynamic range rather than like crushing the blacks. And I'll show you an image that, probably the next image that we do, where I do crush the blacks and I want it to look more contrasty. But this one's just kind of a straight up image and that's how I want it to go. So pull those highlights down a little bit. You can see they're kind of blown out on her arms. So we can pull back that exposure or that contrast rather, and kind of give it just that feel. Now for color, if this photo hadn't already been white balanced, which I did that in camera, a lot of times the phones, which are the cameras that most of you are using, are really good at auto white balancing. That's just kind of the nature of the beast with the phone. If I did need to correct it, luckily these walls are all gray, and they're about 128 gray, just middle of the road, 50% or 50% gray. They're about 50% gray generally. So if I wanted to change that white balance, I would click this little dropper here, slide it over into this area, and tap the check mark. Now, did that change it at all? Yeah, so it didn't really do much, but so let's go into a darker area and select, oh, that's not what I wanted to do. So color. Now, so I'm going to go into a darker area and select that gray. Click there. And so it changed it just a hair, right? Just enough. Made it a little bit warmer. Now, I'm going to, for the sake of this video, I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. What you could also do, since you know the flag is white, bring it up there and click the check mark. Boom. And then obviously it's white. Now, like I said, I did all of this in the camera by just changing it to fluorescent because that's what our gym lights are. And that's pretty much how that went. I feel like it's going to rain. Anywho, and that's pretty much how I did it. Now, for saturation in this image, I usually pull it back just a hair, just a tiny little bit. On my camera, I shoot raw, so I usually have to mess with saturation anyway in the computer, but it is what it is. Now, so as far as this image goes, pull it back a little bit, or go back. I actually like it. I did warm it up quite a bit, just because I wanted that warm feeling in it, and of course it's always the artist's choice, right? So for this image, I am just about done. I usually add a little bit of clarity on this photo. Let's see how it looks. To undo something, you're going to click up here and hold it. I really wish that was a little bit easier to do. I wish they had two buttons on the top, that way you don't have to hold it and drag it down. It's kind of weird. And then vignette, I almost always put just a slight vignette on the image, so we can see before and after. So I definitely brought out her face in the photo, as well as kind of warmed it up a little bit, so we're good to go on this photo. To save it to your camera roll, you're going to click up here, which is essentially the same thing that you do with all of the other apps, and you're going to click Save to Camera Roll. For myself, I always do maximum available, and it'll take a little bit, especially if it's a high resolution file like from the camera. It usually takes a little bit. So we're going to back out of this now, and I'm going to go ahead and bring another photo in from Lightroom, or from the camera roll right here. I'm going to start on this one. So there's quite a bit that I want to do to this image, all right? As far as white balance goes, I'm okay with it. It looks good, but it is a little bit underexposed. Actually, the first thing I want to do is crop it, because the crop on it is, it looks a little funky, and I want it to be a little bit more centered. So bring it in. Luckily, you have these lines here to kind of straighten it out, and that blue on that right-hand side, just like that, right? So now she's centered in the frame. It's going to be an Instagram shot. Good. Pull it in just a hair. That is a little bit weird when you're doing it on the phone, but and you can also drag it around if you wanted to, right? So this application is really powerful. So I'm going to go ahead and click the check mark on the bottom right-hand side because I like the crop. Now, light, obviously the exposure, it is underexposed, so I'm going to bring it up. Pop up some of that contrast, not too much on this photo because we need to bring those highlights down. Now, we're going to come here and bring those shadows out also, especially in that area. So it's already quite a bit different, right? Now, I'm going to go to, the only thing I really need to change on this is clarity to bring out those muscles and bring out some of that detail on there. So let's go back, boom, there it is. Dehaze it a little bit because that's the way I like to do things. And a slight vignette to make it look a little bit darker. Now, if this image is too dark for you, you can always go back to the light part of the image, or part of the editing tool, and bring it up just a hair. For me, that's good right there. Maybe bring those highlights down a little bit because we're starting to get washed out on the right-hand side. Now, you can also mess with the curves on this image. So to bring those highlights down, to go ahead and crush those highlights, bring it down just a little bit, bring those shadows up. This is kind of that where you see a lot of photos on Instagram and Snapchat, whatever the case may be, where the blacks are brought up past the point of, like, where there's a lot of contrast past the point of zero, or above the point of zero rather. Now, you're always going to be in an S curve, so no matter how slight. Now, obviously that's a little bit overdone, but you kind of get the point, right? You can adjust this to however you want it to be, no matter how slight, but it's always going to be in an S. If you go the opposite way, it doesn't look that great. It looks terrible, actually. So I'm going to go ahead and undo all of that, all the way back, just like that. And I'm just going to actually I'm going to click done on the bottom right hand side. And so for this image, I fixed it. It's good. I like the contrast. I like everything about it. Now, I'm going to go ahead and click the check mark and go back into it, and of course save it to the camera roll because I like that image. Now the next image is where the challenge is going to come into play, because when I set my camera white balance on this, it was under the tungsten that's inside of the camera, and it just didn't do a very good job, because I want to say the tungsten was just really strong. It's a very, very, very orange light. So let me find that image real quick. It is this gentleman right here. All right, so obviously we have a lot to do on this image. So first thing I'm going to do, come in here, very underexposed. Luckily I can recover all of that detail here. Contrast, we'll bring that up a little bit. Highlights, bring it down. Shadows, definitely bring those out to get some of that detail on the back right hand side. And now color. So color, I know that his shirt says Rogue Fitness on it, and in the fitness it is white. So I'm gonna come here, I'm gonna drag it down onto probably the T, since it's the easiest to get to, and click check mark. Now that cools it off a lot. That's more accurate as far as color goes. Hold it down, boom, already we see a huge difference. So we're going to come into effects, add some clarity. Now, one thing about clarity, just real quick, when I'm doing portraiture and whatnot, I don't really use a lot of clarity because you don't want to really bring out the wrinkles and the shadows under the eyes or anything like that. You want it to be pretty natural and pretty true to life. With clarity, it does bring out a lot of detail, and you don't necessarily want that in an image or in a portrait, because it's just not going to be good. You're going to get all the freckles, all the tiny little, like if I hadn't shaved this morning, how the little hairs will pop out and whatnot, and it just brings up too much detail. So we've gotten that color corrected. I dehaze it because I always do. And vignette doesn't really matter on this image. And in order to, I like that the coach is staring at him, but if I wanted to cut that out just for purpose, if I wanted to cut that out just to cut it out and see how it looks here, it looks okay. Looks okay. I do like that pop of blue, so we're just going to go ahead and exit out of that. I do like the coach staring at him in the background, like, hey, you got to move, all that kind of stuff, right? So it's telling a story, because that's what you want to do with all of your photos. Now, so as far as this image is concerned, I'm pretty much done. If I wanted to, I could pull the saturation a bit right here. That way he doesn't look so red. About right there. And you can also go into the mix, and you'll have your HSL, or hue, saturation, and luminance sliders. So like I said, he's a little bit too red, so I can bring some of that saturation down, and it takes some of the redness out of his face. Obviously he's working out, so he's going to be red. Let's undo that. There you go. So if a client or whoever you took a snapshot of was a little too red, you can go here. Maybe they have like a blue light on their face or whatever the case may be. You can always kind of adjust that in here. I'm gonna go ahead and click done. This image for me is pretty much done as far as Instagram goes. I can come in here, maybe bring it out a tiny little bit if need be. And obviously you can tell the before and after, huge difference. Hit the check mark, come back in, save to camera roll, maximum available, and I'm pretty much done there. Now, a few tips. Come in here and just mess around with everything, you know, kind of play around quite a bit. There is also a camera that you can use inside of Lightroom down here, and you can adjust your shutter speed and your ISO. Your aperture is pretty fixed, but you can adjust your shutter speed and your ISO if you wanted to. You can adjust white balance in here. I use it quite a bit when I do I like to take, whenever I'm drinking beer, I like to post it onto an application. So if I wanted to, I could come here, and obviously everything is really, that's kind of dark, so I can bring up my ISO. Sound effects or it didn't happen, just like that if I wanted to. My second, since I'm on a table, just like that, right? Obviously that's going to blow out the highlights, but you get the point. Kind of mess around and play with it. And it'll also save it as a DNG or digital negative file, which is much more powerful than a JPEG. A JPEG, you start editing, you start trying to pull down the highlights, bring up the shadows. It's just not going to work out very well. So that is my quick tutorial on how to edit photos in Lightroom on your phone. If you like this video, hit it with the thumbs up. Go ahead and go down here, I think, and click the subscribe button. Oh, we can also take this off. There we go. Go ahead and click the subscribe button down there, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!